Welcome back everybody to another episode of the Obtainable Freedom Project. I'm Dane. I usually don't record on Thursdays. I was just going to do a video for YouTube, but I'll just throw the audio on YouTube. If you're listening on YouTube, you already knew that. I didn't have the video ready by the time Bjorn got here, and he's been doing some work for me, all the video editing specifically. So it wasn't ready by the time he was here. But he is also running the Twitter for OFP at the OFP at the OF Project. So go follow him, help spread the word of Yemen. It's basically just used for Yemen. Let's see here. I have a few articles I just want to read really quick. And this one is from davidswanson.org. Why 55 U.S. senators voted for genocide in Yemen. And it's from March back in 2018. Alright, but it's important to understand why we're there. Alright, so Tuesday's debate and vote in the U.S. Senate on whether to end U.S. participation in the war on Yemen can certainly be presented as a step forward. While 55 U.S. senators voted to keep the war rolling along, 44 voted not to table the resolution to end it. Of those 44, some, including leaders like Senator Chuck Schumer, said not a word in the debate and only voted the right way once the wrong way had won. And conceivably, some could say they were voting in favor of having a vote, upon which they would have voted for more war. But it's safe to say that at least most of the 44 were voting to end a war, and many of them explicitly said so. I use the phrase end a war despite the fact that Saudi Arabia could continue its war without U.S. participation, in part because it's easier and in part because experts have suggested that Saudi Arabia could not do anything like what it is doing without the participation of the U.S. military in identifying targets and refueling planes. It is, of course, also true that were the United States to go beyond what was under consideration on Tuesday and cease providing Saudi Arabia with planes and bombs and use its influence as an oil customer and general war partner to pressure Saudi Arabia to end the war and lift the blockade, the war might end entirely, and millions of human lives might be spared. Virginia Senator Tim Kaine has for years been a leading proponent of getting Congress to authorize wars, making clear that he wanted to keep those wars going, but with congressional authorization. This time was different. Kaine pushed publicly for votes to end U.S. participation in the war on Yemen. He and even his colleague from Virginia, Mark Warner, voted to end the U.S. war. I'm not sure any senator from Virginia had ever done such a thing before, and in fact, no senator from anywhere had ever voted on a resolution raised under the War Powers Act before, because this was the first time any senator had bothered to try such a thing. Kaine tweeted, "Millions in Yemen may starve and 10,000 plus are dead because of a war with no end in sight that the U.S. has stumbled into. Proud to support this proposal to direct the removal of U.S. armed forces." Stumbled into? Forget it. He's rolling. And Kaine was the least of it. To watch Dianne Feinstein argue for ending a war had a very Twilight Zone aspect to it. Look through the list of who voted nay and redefine them in your mind as people who, under just the right conditions, possibly including guaranteed failure to reach a majority, will sometimes vote to end a war. I'd call that progress. But if you watch the debate via C-SPAN, the top question in mind might not be which incredible activism, information, accident, or luck got 44 people to vote the right way, but rather why did 55 cheerful, well-fed, safe people in suits just vote for mass murder? Why did they? Why did they take a break for political party meetings in the middle of the debate and debate other legislation just before and after this resolution, and walk around and chat with each other exactly as if all were normal, while voting for genocide? The facts of the matter were presented very clearly in the debate by numerous U.S. senators from both parties. They denounced war lies as lies. They pointed out the horrendous damage, the deaths, the injuries, the starvation, the cholera. They cited Saudi Arabia's explicit and intentional use of starvation as a weapon. They noted the blockade against humanitarian aid imposed by Saudi Arabia. They endlessly discussed the biggest cholera epidemic ever known. Here's a tweet from Senator Chris Murphy. Gut check moment for the Senate today. We will vote on whether to continue the U.S.-Saudi bombing campaign in Yemen, which has killed over 10,000 civilians and created the largest cholera outbreak in history. Senator Jeff Merkley asked if partnering with a government trying to starve millions of people to death squared with the principles of the United States of America. I tweeted a response, should I tell him or wait and let his colleagues do it? In the end, 55 of his colleagues answered his question, as well as any history book could have done. The ridiculousness of arguments for continuing the war was called out by senators on the floor. Senator Mitch McConnell and others made the claim made to them by Secretary of War James Mattis that ending U.S. participation in bombing civilians in Yemen would mean more civilian deaths in Yemen, not fewer. Others trotted out. I gotta stop there for a second. Can we just realize how fucking stupid that is? Alright, James Mattis is viewed as like a fucking god to a lot of Marines, and it is gross and disgusting. He is a piece of shit. Alright, back to it. That ending U.S. participation in bombing civilians in Yemen would mean more civilian deaths in Yemen, not fewer. Others trotted out to claim made by Trump's lawyers, parroting Obama's lawyer Harold Koh, that bombing a nation flat is neither war nor hostilities. If U.S. troops are not on the ground being shot. Alright, my last video, I guess our troops were probably not being shot, but they were probably on the ground calling in airstrikes that I haven't looked since the last time. But I've never heard of anybody talking about our guys actually being on the ground in Yemen. But I met somebody who claimed it. Watch the other video I talk about in there. Alright, back to the article. Senator Bernie Sanders put a stop to such nonsense. He recommended telling the people of Yemen being bombed with U.S. bombs and U.S. targeting and U.S.-fueled planes that the United States is not really involved. The idea that the full Senate should leave to commit a matter the committee had not bothered to touch in years was also appropriately laughed out of court. Senator Mike Lee reassured his colleagues that ending the U.S. war on Yemen on grounds of illegality wouldn't slow or halt any other illegal U.S. wars. I'm sure you're relieved to hear that. To their credit, Senators Murphy and Lee and Sanders were very clear that a vote to table, rather than directly vote on their resolution to end the war, would be a cowardly vote not to have a debate and not to obey the U.S. Constitution. And to their greater credit, they went ahead and had the substantive debate prior to the vote to table. In the past, on at least one occasion of the many times that we've seen such resolutions brought forward in the House. The war proponents talked substance while the opponents talked only procedure. This change, too, was progress. So why? Why did the Senate vote for genocide, and why is nobody surprised by it? Well, the arguments made by the senators on the right side of the debate certainly left something to be desired. Sanders spoke of the dead in the wars of Vietnam and Iraq, and they were all Americans. He said the war on Vietnam almost destroyed an entire generation of Americans. This was a war that killed 6 million people in Vietnam, Laos, and Cambodia, plus 50,000 from the U.S. How can people come to think about one-sided slaughters if we pretend they don't really exist? Senator Tom Udall, I think that's his name. All right. Senator Tom Udall said that from World War II until the presidency of Donald Trump, the altruistic leader of spreading democracy, although not quite perfectly, in so saying, Udall bestows on Trump a sort of magical power as well as rewriting U.S. history. The U.S. public was allowed no vote on Tuesday. Neither was Trump. The resolution itself was limited, marred by loopholes, and not surely whipped for by many of those who voted against tabling it. Perhaps a stronger resolution would have failed even more badly, or perhaps a more coherent case against war would have been more persuasive. I do not know. But the notion that you should arm and assist the Saudi dictatorship in bombing people when it's called anti-ISIS and not when it's called anti-Houthi seems a trickier case to make than the one you should stop arming and assisting in the slaughter of human beings, generating more enemies, impoverishing the public, draining funds and from human needs, damaging the environment, eroding the rule of law, imperializing the presidency, militarizing your culture and schools and police, and aligning your government with a brutal monarchy. Perhaps that's a case that has to be made to the public first and then to the senators, but many senators made clear how they were thinking. Lee was not often trying to reassure them about the setting of precedences. One of them openly worried that if refueling bombers that were blowing up people's homes in one country was counted as hostilities, then refueling bombers that were blowing up people's homes in any country could be counted as hostilities. And then, what kind of world would we have? So, a vote against one war is never just a vote against one war. It's a vote to challenge, if ever so slightly, the power of the war machine. These senators are paid not to do that. And then it goes on to show all the senators, and then there's a little bit at the end. I'm just going to read the last paragraph here. But what if we come someday to understand that war is monstrous? Then what should we make of war supporters, including columnists? And what am I to make of things I myself thought a decade or 3 ago, and now no longer think? Isn't there something a shade monstrous about praising war on the anniversary of the 2003 attack on Iraq, and at the same moment that the U.S. Senate is voting to kill the people of Yemen? And yet, isn't such behavior found in a column opposing racism, written by an anti-racism activist, the work of something other than a monster? Perhaps senators aren't monstrous either. Perhaps we can bring them around yet. We have to try. Sorry for the poor reading of that last paragraph there. Good luck trying to get them to see the light of what they're actually doing. How can they not know? They might not know, but that would seem incorrect from my point of view. I think they know very well what's happening. They probably don't know all the details, but if they are getting paid to vote that way, it's just the thought has to cross their mind of, oh, hey, yeah, I'm going to take this money and people are going to die. And they can't care about that. I'm not saying people can't change their minds. I went over there. I was a Marine infantryman, So it can happen, and hopefully it does. I think the more likely thing that will happen, or could happen, is that the public opinion of it gets so strong against it that they pretend to all of a sudden care and quit. And, I think these people should be tried for mass murder, but if we can just get them to stop committing mass murder, that'd be good with me. Anyways, here's another one that I found on LouRockwell.com. I will link to all the articles. This one is by Michael Rosef with the same headline: Why 55 U.S. senators voted for genocide in Yemen. That's the headline of a blog. It's a good question. There are 6 factors involved: Iran, sales of arms, Israel, the CIA, indifferent cruelty, and the system of empire. These are all bad reasons that shouldn't persuade right-thinking and honorable U.S. senators, but votes for genocide do not come from right-thinking and honorable senators. Iran. The idea is that Saudi Arabia is thwarting Iran and Yemen. The evidence for this is very, very thin. But even if the Saudis want to thwart Iran somehow in Yemen, that doesn't justify either a war initiated by Saudi Arabia, a war of the type and scale being waged by the U.S., and Saudi Arabia, and a U.S. presence in that war. Sales of arms. Huge sales to the Saudis are being made by U.S. companies who influence senators. And I just want to say, I believe that why Trump kept this going is because, oh, we're making so many jobs by selling these weapons, which is just bullshit. I think somebody was just like, hey man, you're not stopping the sales of these weapons. And he's like, good to go. I don't really care about them fucking people anyways. All right, Israel. Israel is anti-Iran and in league with Saudi Arabia. Senators are influenced by the Israel lobby. Notice that in none of these factors or those to follow does the American public play a part. The Senate is only remotely under the control of Americans on this issue, and why would it be? Americans are little affected by what their government does in Yemen, and the U.S. role is kept quite hidden. The visible and well-heeled Israel lobby is more influential than the invisible pro-American public lobby. The CIA. The CIA operates an anti-Al-Qaeda operation inside Yemen. The war has allowed Al-Qaeda to expand. This justifies an expanded CIA presence there. This benefits the CIA. Indifferent cruelty. The lives of Yemenis count for little to those who vote for genocide. This is a characteristic of fallen man that is sometimes ameliorated by moral teachings and the threats of punishments or worse, blowback, but only now and then. The institutional customs and mechanisms to control this trait are not strong enough to stop genocides. The system of empire. Habitual cruelty is a feature of the U.S. empire. Empires enforce order, actually control and dominance, over broad domains that they seek to extend. They use killing to accomplish their expansion in most cases. Their victims are not counted as costs. Alright, like I said, I will link to both of those articles. I do just kind of want to throw in there, one of the reasons that 9/11 happened, that Osama bin Laden said, was our presence in Saudi Arabia. And now it's more of a presence, I would think, with dealing with them, helping them, and everything to commit genocide in Yemen. So, not only are we killing a bunch of kids over there, not only are we helping Al-Qaeda, maybe not directly, but definitely indirectly, we are also making ourselves much less safe. We are causing reason for people to want to come over here and kill us. We can't murder people around the entire fucking world and then get confused when something like 9/11 happens. So if you don't care about the dead kids and all the other dead people over there that are coming directly from our aid to Saudi Arabia by blowing up water treatment facilities amongst cholera hospitals, and maybe you don't care about Al-Qaeda gaining ground, maybe you can care about not having another attack on the U.S. here in the future. Alright, with that, I'm out of here. We'll talk to you guys soon.